Welcome into Locked On Bama, where we're just today going to take a tour of all things Alabama football.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, just a lot going on in the world of Alabama football stuff right now. And obviously practice is going on. Nick Saban talking about some offensive linemen as starters. And so a lot just to dive into. So I'm just going to let you ramble for a minute.
Yeah, really, I thought the offensive line was sort of the story of Nick Saban's press conference yesterday afternoon. He got a question about Terrence Ferguson. I think Terrence Ferguson, to me, or TJ, as the coaches call him TJ, and I understand the players call him Ferg. But TJ Ferguson, to me, is probably the story of fall camp so far. We're only 6-7 practices into fall camp, but I think he's the biggest story, and this is why. When we left spring practice on A-Day, and we penciled in, okay, on A-Day, here are the starters, and we're going to throw in the injured guys, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Deontay Lawson, guys that didn't practice in the spring, but clearly they were going to be starters in the fall. So when you're projecting the starters after spring practice, you didn't include TJ Ferguson as a starter. But here we are just 6 practices into fall camp, and he's clearly a starter. Nick Saban himself said, Ferg is a starter to me, and we really have 6 or 7 guys. So it's not just the 5 offensive linemen you project, but obviously at least 2 guys that would come off the bench. Nick Saban considers starters, and that's great news because obviously that means that not only are you comfortable with 5 guys, you're actually comfortable with 7. So you have some depth there in case you want to rotate or somebody gets banged up. But TJ Ferguson is a guy that we didn't include as a starter after spring practice. We didn't talk about him a ton this summer. And to me, he's the story of fall camp for that reason, that he's right now the starting left guard for Alabama when they play Middle Tennessee State and Texas. And again, it's a bit of a surprise because he didn't leave the spring as starter, but we shouldn't be surprised that he's in this position. He's entering year 3. It's typical for offensive linemen to develop at their own pace. It's not crazy that the light would come on for him entering his year 3. That's not unusual for big linemen. He's added a lot of weight. Actually, he's the kind of offensive lineman that when Alabama signed him, they wanted him to add some weight. Showed up at Alabama in the 285 type range, which isn't small, but in today's college football world, you kind of like your big uglies up front weighing around 300 pounds. So TJ's actually added weight since he's been here, and now he's up well above 300. Definitely looks the part, massive human being, and but very highly rated. On3 rated. TJ Ferguson is the number 2 interior offensive line prospect in the country. When he came out of high school in Georgia, he was recruited by all the big programs, and we were fortunate to sign him at Alabama. We shouldn't be shocked that here we are in year 3 and the lights come on for him. And for now, he has apparently moved Darian Dalcourt out of the starting lineup, and TJ Ferguson will be Alabama's starting left guard. Nick Saban mentioned he liked as many as 7 guys. I'm assuming that 7 would be, by the way, when asked, that the left tackle for right now is Elijah Pritchett. For right now, the left guard is Terrence Ferguson. The center is, of course, Seth McLaughlin. And the right side is just entrenched with All-American candidates, Tyler Booker at right guard and J.C. Latham at right tackle, who may be the best offensive lineman in college football, certainly on the short list. So those will be your 5 starters. But when Coach Saban said we have 7 guys I consider starters, he's obviously including Darian Dalcourt, who's a super senior in his 5th year, who's back for his 3rd year potentially as a starter, and Caden Proctor, the superstar true freshman from Iowa, who got off the bus ready to play, which is extremely rare for linemen, especially the offensive line position. We've seen it a handful of times in the Saban era, so we're not shocked at Alabama when that happens because we saw this happen with Cam Robinson, with Andre Smith, with Jonah Williams, with Evan Neal. These freshmen linemen that show up not just ready to play, but they show up ready to be good SEC football players. They're really unicorns. We're just blessed in the Saban era to recruit these guys often that show up ready to play at that position. And Caden Proctor looks like another one. Proctor currently in a battle with Elijah Pritchett for that starting job at left tackle. So those are your 7 guys that Nick Saban is referring to as starters. And let me tell you, the offensive line's been not ideal the last 2 years, and we're getting there. We're getting there. It's still not 2020 again just yet, but they are getting there.
I think you're right. The offensive line hadn't been ideal. I think it's partially maybe the talent that hadn't been the same as it's been in years prior, and maybe the offensive scheme. So maybe some things are changing. And also, I think when you bring in some coaches like Alabama has, even on the defensive side with somebody like Kevin Steele, and it changes the mentality of the squad. And you see they're going back to more of their make their bleep quit type attitude. And you love to see it because that's exactly what we want. What's your over-under on Caden Proctor becoming a starter? I'm gonna say he's a starter by week 3. So let's call it the over-under of games is 2.5.
I'm going to go over, and this is what I'm basing it on. I do think, I've already said, and I'm not changing, I do think Elijah Pritchett is going to begin the year as the starting left tackle, and Caden Proctor will overtake him at some point. That's still my prediction. I'm going to back it up just a little bit, though, just based on what we saw Saturday, where Pritchett had to come out with an injury, leaving Proctor as the first team left tackle the rest of the day. And he really struggled with the Dallas Turner. Now, that is not an insult. There will be all SEC experienced tackles that take on Dallas Turner this fall, and they will lose. Dallas Turner is really good. He's primed to be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft, in my opinion. It is no shame that the true freshman Caden Proctor struggled blocking Dallas Turner, but it is a reminder of how steep it is to go from playing high school football in Iowa to starting in the SEC the next season, playing pass rushers who are just one step short of the National Football League. So I'm going to give Caden Proctor a few more weeks to work on quickness, to work on his technique, and to really learn the spot. I think Pritchett is ahead of him for this reason and this reason only. Pritchett's been here a year. He's been here a year. He knows it a little more. He's had more time with David Ballou and the strength and conditioning staff, but he's been here longer. He's not as gifted, in my opinion, though Pritchett is a gifted kid. And frankly, if we're guessing 2024 lineups, I think both Proctor and Pritchett will be in the starting lineup, both of them in 2024 when J.C. Latham moves on.
Jimmy, I want to tell everybody now about eBay Motors. You can see it right down there below my face and your face. ebaymotors.com. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. Trust me on that. I drive a lot. You need your motor vehicles running correctly. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors with eBay Guaranteed Fit. You can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know your part will, in fact, fit or your money back. That's their guarantee. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game at no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, the right prices on ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Let's ride. Jimmy on the next Locked On Bama, which I think it'll either be tomorrow or Saturday. We don't know yet. Maybe Sunday. Could be any of those days. Maybe. Could be tomorrow. Could be this afternoon if something big happens. Who knows? We'll just continue to talk about practice. And then, look, there's a scrimmage Saturday. I bet you we do a podcast after the scrimmage Saturday.
Could be, depending on what kind of information comes out of it. I mean, these are closed. It's a closed scrimmage. Very few people are invited to this one. The scrimmage the following Saturday, there tends to be more people at that one. This is more of a very closed environment. So we're unsure, even at BOL, we're unsure as to how much information we will get following the scrimmage. But Nick Saban will address the media following the scrimmage anyway. We'll get something out of Coach.
Tonight, also, just talking about all things Bama, It'll be New England taking on Houston in NFL preseason. I know NFL preseason isn't the sexiest. In fact, I saw the attendance at the Hall of Fame game. It wasn't great. But, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to see how much Mac Jones plays. I want to see To'o play, Christian Harris play, Mechie. I bet you Mechie makes a catch tonight. That'll be Mechie makes a catchy. Has nobody done that yet? Why don't we do that?
I think you're the first. Probably the first person.
Mechie makes a catchy. Gosh, we should have had shirts.
There's a reason that's the first time.
Will Anderson. So Anthony Jennings from right here near me. Mac Wilson, yeah.
Christian Barmore.
He's gotten to be so good, he may not have to play in this, though.
I think I've seen a lot of NFL Network this week, and it seems that different coaches have different, there's just different takes on who should play and who's not going to play. And I saw one coach specifically say, all my starters will play at least 2 or 3 series, including the quarterback, because it's important. And then I saw another coach say, my starters aren't going to play. They're veteran guys, and they already know, and we need to look at young. So you're going to see various different philosophies from the different head coaches. But my limited understanding is the Texans plan to play starters tonight, including C.J. Stroud. So those NFL fans that are watching, not just for the Alabama guys, there's a lot of interesting NFL things tonight. But I believe Mac Jones and C.J. Stroud will be the starters tonight.
That's awesome. C.J. Stroud should play. It's his first preseason game. Yeah, you should play.
Correct.
Also, congratulations go out to Andre Smith, former Alabama great, former Cincinnati Bengal great. He's going to take a coaching gig helping Moody High School. I don't know if you saw that. That just came across Twitter, and I was like, that's great. Look, I love these former state of Alabama guys and former Alabama players, but more specifically just state of Alabama guys like Phillip Rivers coming back to coach a high school team. Of course, Andre Smith now coach. I mean, I just love to see all that. So congratulations to him. And then I wanted to show you this video.
One, two, three into the 4. Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door.
I had to stop it because I don't know if any cussing comes up. I didn't.
About to say that was brave.
I did not vet the video, but what I love, brave. People are like, first of all, if you're just listening and not watching, you're like, why did you just do that? Well, that was Snoop Dogg, who, by the way, I think is exactly my age, wearing a Bryce Young jersey and doing his pretty famous Snoop dance, whatever. I don't know what dance you call that, but it looks cool. He makes it look good. If I did it, it would be looking terrible. He makes it look cool. And
it looked like a sound check before a show. I've been told, but it looked like it was a sound check before a show.
Well, and I just think it's really cool. I mean, that he's wearing a Bryce Young jersey. And it doesn't mean a ton. It's not national news. But Snoop carries a ton of weight.
Not literally. Not literally. He may weigh less than Devontae Smith.
But he does carry a lot of clout, I should say it that way. Yeah. And so the fact that he's wearing a Bryce Young jersey, I just think that's super cool. And I think it's great for Bryce. And I think what it'll do is increase the sales of Bryce Young jerseys. It also, in my Alabama-centric head, I'm like, oh, that's going to help with recruiting. It probably isn't going to do anything for recruiting at all, but I like it. And
it occurred to me that Snoop and Bryce share a hometown. I mean, Snoop and Bryce are both from Southern California. They're both from LA.
Yeah.
So
okay,
I'm
that's
sure
true.
And Snoop famously coached for a long time. Coached a little league team that he funded and put together from parts of LA. And I doubt Bryce was ever involved with that. I never heard that Bryce was involved in Snoop's little league that Snoop put together and coached. But I'm sure that they run in the same circles because of that reason.
It is. I just think it's super cool. And I know what you thought I was going to do when I said I want to play this video. You thought I was going to play this video.
Looking for Brooks in the corner. Got it. Touchdown, Alabama.
That was Bryce Young in a Bryce Young jersey that time.
Very true. Very true. All right, Jimmy, let's take a break. When we come back, maybe you guys at On3 and Bama Online have had this feature for a while, and I've just never looked into it. Y'all got this team rankings breakdown thing that I was just fascinated with this morning. We're going to talk about it when we come back. And we're back. I hate to be a guy like, oh, I got this cool new thing, and everybody's like, no, that's been out a while. You guys over at On3 have a team rankings breakdown. Now, when I first thought about it, I was like, I assume that was just y'all breaking down the recruiting class, maybe having a little blurb after each class, after each, ranking of the classes, where you have Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Bama 3, Florida 4, et cetera. But no, on this breakdown, let's go to Bama, who y'all have number 3. You have the NIL average, meaning this is the NIL valuation for each player. With the average for each player that Alabama has committed is $137,000. Couple of questions here, Jimmy. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's accurate? Number one. Number two, is that annually or is that over 4 years?
I think it's annually.
Wow, that's big money.
But keep in mind, it's sort of complicated. I know everybody's intrigued by this, and you should be, to Google, because the experts at On3 that do the NIL can explain it far better than I can. But what people need to know, and I know that number and that stuff has got some criticism from people that haven't read all the stuff, but it's a goal of the company at On3 to be at the forefront of NIL, to understand it better than all the other services. And there's a lot of writers out there, there's a lot of analysts out there. They don't like it, so they don't want to report on it. We've done the opposite at NIL. We've dove in. We even held a national conference of NIL to have NIL lawyers, some of the most high-profile college kids. Kirk Herbstreit was there. Livy Dunn was there. And they had this national conference about NIL. And Shannon Terry, our CEO, he understands NIL very well. That number is not pulled out of the air, nor is the number from public documents or an interview with the kid. Ultimately, it is an estimation, but it's an estimation that's done by people that work in the NIL industry, people that work for and in the collectives, lawyers, and marketing agents. It is a team of science, the best they put together to come up with the most accurate understanding. There's even a breakdown on what roster value means and what commercial value means. Roster value is that check you get every month from the collective. Marketing value means the amount of money you might make from doing the Dr. Pepper commercial or the clothing line commercial or Milrose Roback ad. And those two things are combined to come up with that NIL value. It is not reporting exactly what players are making. It is an estimated value based on our experts' understanding of the marketplace. But On3 explains it way better than I can.
I just thought it was really cool. And when you say, you're absolutely right. I don't think anybody fully understands it yet. The people who are supposed to oversee this, because, and the way I know this, Texas A&M's collective just got shut down yesterday. They shut it down themselves because they got some memo from the IRS. And my first thought was, Texas A&M is this incredibly wealthy university that's got lawyers out the yin-yang. And the IRS, a memo from the IRS scared them enough to shut it down, which tells me that either their lawyers didn't do their job or Texas A&M was like, yeah, we're going to sort of bend our own rules here. And then if somebody says, hey, you can't do this, then we'll deal with it then. Right. And the IRS, they maybe didn't say you can't do this. They were like, yeah, somebody's going to have to pay some taxes on this.
Well, it kicks off a rant for me because I dealt for a long time, particularly the first year of NIL, which was really 2021 when the NIL was brand new. And I dealt with a lot of questions, got a lot of questions, and had a lot of angry Alabama fans upset that Alabama wasn't super aggressive in minute number 1 of NIL and being aggressive like Texas A&M was, or like Miami and their guy was. And why isn't Alabama doing this? And why aren't we the leaders? Well, it's because, as I said all along back then, it's not about being first. It's not about being loudest. This is brand new. You better be smart about it. And that's exactly what Alabama did, led by two incredibly bright minds in the college sports world, Greg Byrne and Nick Saban. And they handled it smartly. And now Texas A&M's collective gets shut down. Miami's guys filing bankruptcy and all this stuff that's going on and all this negative news about other programs who were super aggressive quickly instead of smartly. And I think Alabama's handled it great. The proof is in where Alabama's recruiting classes are ranked and the fact that NIL at Alabama is highly competitive and quiet. You're not reading about it in the news for all the wrong reasons. So, but one thing that A&M, and again, A&M is a good example of apparently from our read on it here and with what went on with one of their collectives is they were one of the programs being super aggressive from day one before everyone had this NIL space figured out what was going to be allowable. You know, hey, the NCAA is not the only thing to worry about here. When you're talking about large sums of money, now there's lawyers and accountants and tax people. You got to worry about them, not just, hey, what the NCAA said. And a lot of people felt, hey, the NCAA is never going to do anything about NIL. It's the wild, wild west. You can do whatever you want. And some people felt that way. And I think those people will ultimately be proven wrong. And I think the NCAA is soon to have uniform NIL rules, and we'll see who chooses to follow them and who doesn't. But I bet Alabama does.
I just found it so fascinating, and I think you're absolutely right. There have been some people on various message boards, particularly, that have said, hey, y'all, something's not right here. And they seem to all have an accounting background. Something's not right here. Something seems like this shouldn't be happening. But I think nobody's been able to put their finger on it. And part of the reason is I don't think anybody fully understands it. So the fact that On3 is doing the best job they can to educate everybody, I dig that. I mean, I like the fact they've embraced it because, frankly, when it comes to NIL, for the most part, it got so bad. And for me, in terms of not being able to understand it or not having somebody be able to explain it, that I've sort of just put it to the background, just called everything a blanket statement of NIL. And but I just found that interesting. Here's the other thing that's interesting to me. And I work with the HSA Radio Network. I'm going to be calling the Thompson-Opelika game in a couple of weeks. Can't wait for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. Going to be working with the scoreboard show again. And so I love in-state players here in the state of Alabama. Alabama's in-state percentage on this particular year is 35% of the class is from in-state. Juxtapose that with Auburn's is 67%. I think it's really, really smart of Auburn to be targeting in-state folks right now, setting those grassroots. I've said it a million times on this podcast. I may be proven to be wrong, but for all the awesomeness that is Nick Saban, and I can't thank him enough for just improving my life over the last 16 years. And having me enjoy all that we've gone through. Whenever he leaves, and if assuming the next guy can't cast as wide of a net recruiting-wise, we may have some work to do to get back in and reestablish ourselves in some of these in-state schools. Now, some people may think I'm overreacting. I'm not trying to overreact. I'm not screaming from the mountaintop here. I'm not pulling my hair out. I'm just saying that, if I can't believe Auburn hasn't taken more advantage of our neglect on some of the in-state talent. Again, we've recruited gangbusters. I'm not complaining one iota. I'm just talking about the future. Here's another thing that's very interesting to me. The average distance of a player to Alabama, it says 799 miles, essentially 800 miles away. That is bananas. And again, put that against Auburn's. Auburn's average distance for their player to the school is 145 miles. Unless I'm reading this wrong, that is just very interesting to me.
Well, one thing about that, and again, I don't know, even my own website, I don't know how they came up with that. How are we counting Justin Okoronkwo? Because
That's a good point.
Okoronkwo by himself is literally.
He blows the average.
I think he's 4,000 miles, and I don't know world geography well enough to say, but I think Okoronkwo in Germany is like 4,000 miles away. I'm not sure if they're counting the East Coast edge to Tuscaloosa for him or literally Munich, where he's from. Hey, one last point about NIL before we leave it, because I think it's important. this is where, because I'm not the biggest NIL expert in the world. I know quite a bit because I work for On3 and know quite a bit from a legal background and quite a bit because I'm a sports nut. But even I don't have a good enough grasp of all that's going on in the NIL world. But I do know this is where fans go wrong. There's extremists on both sides. And by extremists, what I mean is we still have way too many fans that underestimate the impact of NIL on recruiting. They scratch their heads over, why does Bob from Macon, Georgia, why is he turning down Georgia and Alabama to go to Texas Tech? And I know that didn't happen, but I'm just saying, I don't understand. Alabama's winning. Georgia's winning. Why would this kid choose? It's NIL. It's a new world. It's that. NIL explains fully every weird outcome that's going on in recruiting right now. And some people scratch their heads. They'll write 7 paragraphs online, not being able to understand something in recruiting and not once have NIL mentioned anywhere in it, when in fact NIL was the reason that something like that happened. Now flip to the other extreme. People that think that all of these players are making a ton of money and one program pays a lot more than another. And over there, they're baseball, softball players, they're golfers, they're track guys making all this NIL. That's the other extreme that's so wrong. There's not that much money. Shannon Terry has been very vocal about this too. Shannon Terry, who understands NIL better than anybody else, Shannon Terry is like sick of seeing the gross overestimations of how much NIL money there is out there for these kids. So don't be an extremist. Don't be the person who scratches their head and can't figure out why a kid made a weird recruiting decision because of NIL. That's why he did. But secondly, don't be the one that thinks, gosh, we lost 3 tennis players to the portal. We're just not paying enough NIL money to the tennis players. They're not making NIL money or nothing of significance. And the football players aren't making $1 million a month or $1 million a year, unless you're Bryce Young. The only ones that can do that are first team All-Americans from major power elite schools. They make a lot of money, but no one else is getting generational wealth here.
I did look it up. Tuscaloosa to Munich, Germany is 5,000 miles.
Hey.
So yes, you're right. He blew the average out of the water. That's,
if I don't know how they count that. That's a great question. I'm not even sure who to ask. I'm not gonna bother Shannon with it. So I'm not sure who to ask it on 3.
Well, you know what? They should do the average distance. They should do the average distance the way we do star rankings. Once you get over 20 players, I think this is how a lot of teams do it. They're like, okay, we're going to take your top 20 players and then do the rankings or whatever.
We're also maybe close to getting a commitment. I mean, we're in the running for a kid from Quebec. That's going to affect that too.
All right. Well, listen, Jimmy, let's go ahead and take the end of the show. We won't take a break. We'll take at least a 24-hour break.
Break here.
And then we'll be back either tomorrow or the day after, sometime in there. And until then, thank you for watching, everybody. We appreciate you guys a ton. And roll tide.
Roll tide.